Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like someone was walking all over you? Like no matter what you did, no matter how hard you tried, you were never treated with the respect you deserve? It's a painful and frustrating reality that most of us have faced at some point in our lives. Whether it's that colleague who constantly interrupts you in meetings, the so-called friend who makes you the punchline of every joke, or even a family member who dismisses your feelings, disrespect can leave you feeling small, powerless, and doubting your self-worth. But here's the cold, hard truth. You don't have to tolerate disrespect, not from anyone. And it's time you reclaim your power. I've been there. I've experienced moments where I was pushed around, belittled, and felt like my voice didn't matter. For a long time, I thought that staying silent or being the bigger person would somehow earn me respect. But let me save you the trouble I went through. It doesn't. Respect isn't given to those who stay silent in the face of disrespect. It's given to those who demand it, who set clear boundaries, and who refuse to let anyone make them feel small. In this guide, I'm going to walk you through 8 brutally honest strategies to deal with disrespect. These aren't your typical sugar-coated tips that tell you to just ignore it or rise above it. No, this is about standing your ground, claiming your worth, and refusing to let anyone treat you with anything less than the respect you deserve. So, if you're tired of being disrespected and ready to take control, stay with me. By the end of this, you'll be armed with the tools to handle anyone who dares to undermine your value. 1. Set clear boundaries. The very first and arguably the most important step in dealing with disrespect is to set firm and clear boundaries. I'm not talking about making subtle hints or hoping they'll figure it out on their own. People aren't mind readers. When someone disrespects you, it's not enough to just stay quiet and hope they'll realize they've crossed a line. You need to tell them, and this is where a lot of us struggle. We think that setting boundaries will make us look rude or confrontational, especially if we're dealing with someone we care about. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't about being rude. They're about self-respect. The way people treat you is often a reflection of what you allow. If you let them disrespect you once, without consequences, chances are they'll keep doing it. I learned this the hard way. There was a time in my life when I thought that being the nice person would eventually win people over. I stayed quiet when I was disrespected, thinking that if I didn't make a fuss, people would recognize my patience and return the favor with respect. Spoiler alert, they didn't. The only thing my silence did was give them permission to keep walking all over me. So, how do you set boundaries? It's about being direct, calm, and assertive, not aggressive. The goal isn't to lash out in anger, but to let the other person know exactly where the line is and what's not acceptable. For example, if someone keeps interrupting you, instead of staying quiet and feeling frustrated, you could say something like, "I'd appreciate it if you could let me finish speaking before jumping in." At first, it might feel uncomfortable. There's that fear of conflict or making the situation worse. But trust me, the discomfort of setting boundaries is temporary. The respect you'll gain by enforcing those boundaries, that will last much longer. Over time, people will understand that you won't tolerate disrespect, and they'll start treating you accordingly. Remember, respect doesn't come from silence, it comes from standing up for yourself. When you set boundaries, you send a clear message that your self-respect is non-negotiable. It's not about what they think of you, it's about how you feel about yourself. 2. Don't engage in power struggles. Now that you've set your boundaries, the next step is learning how to deal with people who try to pull you into power struggles. Let me be brutally honest here. Disrespectful people often thrive on power dynamics. They want to make you feel small, provoke a reaction, and ultimately pull you into a back-and-forth battle where they can exert control over your emotions. The more you react, whether by getting defensive, angry, or upset, the more power you give them. Here's the harsh truth. Disrespectful people feed off your reaction. They love it when they see you rattled or upset. It gives them a sense of dominance, and the moment you react emotionally, you've handed them exactly what they were looking for: control. But this is where you can flip the script. Instead of engaging in their power play, you need to practice the art of non-engagement. This doesn't mean that you let their disrespect slide or that you ignore it completely, but it does mean that you don't let their behavior dictate your emotions. The key here is to stay calm, composed, and indifferent. Imagine a scenario where someone is constantly trying to get under your skin, making passive-aggressive comments, or even directly disrespecting you. Most people's first instinct is to defend themselves, to argue, or to prove that they're right. But here's where Stoic wisdom can be your best ally. One of the great Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, said it best: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, you can't control how someone else behaves, but you can control how you respond. Disengaging doesn't mean you're weak or that you're backing down. On the contrary, it means you're taking back your power. When you refuse to react emotionally, you send a message that their attempts to provoke you are ineffective. So, how exactly do you do this? When someone disrespects you, instead of immediately jumping into a reaction, take a moment to pause, breathe, stay calm. Respond with calm, logical statements instead of emotional outbursts. You can say something like, "I'm not going to engage in this conversation if it's going to be disrespectful," or simply remove yourself from the situation if necessary. By doing so, you remain in control of the interaction, not them. Here's what happens when you disengage. You take away their control. The person disrespecting you loses their grip because they no longer have the emotional reaction they were seeking. They become powerless in the face of your calmness, and often their behavior shifts as a result. No one enjoys picking a fight with someone who refuses to fight back. Disengaging from power struggles isn't about letting them win. It's about preserving your dignity and mental energy. You don't need to get sucked into every battle to prove your worth. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to walk away with your head held high, leaving them to deal with the frustration of their own behavior. So next time someone tries to drag you into a disrespectful exchange, remember this: stay calm, stay composed, and don't engage. In doing so, you not only protect your peace, but also show them that their disrespectful behavior doesn't have any power over you. The third strategy is simple but powerful. Limit your exposure to people who don't respect you. If someone consistently disrespects you, it's time to start minimizing their presence in your life. The truth is, disrespectful people can be emotionally draining, and if you're constantly around them, their negativity can start to weigh you down, affecting not only your mood, but also your self-esteem. Now, I get it. Sometimes it's not as easy as cutting people off completely. Maybe it's a colleague you have to work with daily, or a family member you can't entirely avoid. But even in those cases, you still have control over how much time and energy you allow them to take up in your life. I used to believe that I had to tolerate certain people because they were part of my daily life. Whether it was a toxic co-worker or a family member who made constant jabs, I thought there was no choice but to put up with it. But here's what I realized. While you might not be able to cut some people out entirely, you can control how often you engage with them. If it's a colleague, limit your conversations to strictly professional topics. Don't give them any more time than necessary. If it's a friend or family member who constantly disrespects you, don't engage in unnecessary conversations or activities with them. You don't have to answer every call, respond to every text, or be available for every get-together. It's perfectly okay to quietly distance yourself from people who drain your energy. What's important to note here is that you don't need to make a big announcement about it. You don't need to tell them, "Hey, I'm avoiding you now because you're disrespectful." No, that's unnecessary. Simply start removing yourself from situations where you know you'll be disrespected. The less time you spend with toxic people, the less influence they have over you, and the more you can focus on surrounding yourself with those who respect and uplift you. There's a saying that goes, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Think about that for a second. If you're constantly surrounded by people who disrespect you, what does that say about the energy you're absorbing? Disrespect is contagious. If you're around it enough, you may start to believe you deserve it, or worse, you might start to tolerate it more and more until it becomes a norm in your life. By limiting your exposure to disrespectful people, you reclaim your time, your energy, and your peace. You'll also notice that once you start distancing yourself, your mental clarity improves and you feel less weighed down by the emotional baggage they bring into your life. 4. Respond with silence. One of the most powerful tools you can use in response to disrespect is also the simplest: silence. Not every rude comment or disrespectful action deserves a reply. In fact, sometimes the best response is no response at all. Disrespectful people often try to provoke you. They want a reaction, a confrontation, something they can feed off of to justify their behavior or continue their power play. They thrive on making you lose your cool, getting under your skin, and pulling you into their web of negativity. The more you react, the more control they have over you. But when you choose to respond with silence, you rob them of that power. I've learned this through personal experience. There have been times when I was disrespected, and every fiber of my being wanted to react, to argue, or to explain why the other person was wrong. But over time, I realized something. Silence speaks louder than words. It's a statement in itself, a declaration that you won't lower yourself to their level of pettiness. Think of it this way. When someone disrespects you and you respond with silence, you force them to sit with their own behavior. There's no emotional response from you for them to latch onto. There's no argument to fuel the fire. They're left with nothing but their own actions, and that can be incredibly unsettling for them. Silence is also a powerful form of self-control. It shows that you are in charge of your emotions and not easily rattled by someone's attempt to provoke you. Instead of defending yourself or retaliating, you're choosing to rise above the noise. It's a way of saying, "I'm not going to waste my time or energy on this," and trust me, that can be more powerful than any rebuttal. So how do you use silence effectively? Here's a tip: pause before you react. The next time someone disrespects you, instead of immediately responding, take a deep breath. Let the silence fill the space. This not only gives you time to collect your thoughts, but it also forces the other person to sit with the weight of their words. You'd be surprised at how quickly silence can diffuse a situation. For example, if someone throws a rude or passive-aggressive comment your way, rather than firing back with a snappy reply, you can simply let it hang in the air. You don't need to defend yourself or justify anything to someone who's being disrespectful. By saying nothing, you send the message that their comment doesn't even warrant a response from you. Now, silence doesn't mean that you're letting them get away with it or that you're avoiding confrontation. It simply means you're choosing your battles wisely. Not every disrespectful comment is worth your time, and sometimes the most dignified thing you can do is let your silence speak for you. When you respond with silence, you maintain your composure and self-respect. You show that you're above the petty remarks and attempts to drag you down. In fact, silence can often make the other person feel more uncomfortable than anything you could say, because it denies them the satisfaction of seeing you flustered. Silence also gives you the upper hand. While the other person might expect an argument, your silence leaves them unsure of how to proceed. They're left with their own awkwardness, and they quickly realize that their disrespectful behavior didn't get the reaction they were hoping for. In summary, silence is a powerful weapon in your toolkit when dealing with disrespect. It's a subtle yet effective way to stand your ground without engaging in unnecessary drama. So the next time someone disrespects you, remember, you don't always need to respond. Sometimes silence says everything that needs to be said. 5. Set clear boundaries, again, if necessary. Sometimes it's not enough to set boundaries once and expect that people will always respect them. There will be instances when individuals continue to cross the line despite your efforts. In those cases, it's crucial to reinforce your boundaries and be prepared to do it as often as necessary. Setting boundaries isn't just a one-time event. It's a continuous process of asserting what's acceptable and what's not. Let me be clear. Boundaries are not negotiable. They are your personal guidelines for how you expect to be treated. If someone disrespects you repeatedly, it's time to restate your boundaries even more firmly. People will test your limits, especially if they are used to you being passive or accommodating in the past. That's why consistent reinforcement is key. The moment you let something slide, you're sending the message that your boundaries are flexible, and trust me, people will take advantage of that. When I first started setting boundaries, I was worried about being perceived as too confrontational or rude. I didn't want to come across as harsh or overly strict, but here's what I learned. Boundaries aren't about being aggressive, they're about self-respect. 6. Don't take it personally. When someone disrespects you, it's natural to feel hurt or angry. Disrespect can feel deeply personal, as if it's a direct attack on your worth or character. But here's an important truth. Most of the time, disrespect says more about the other person than it does about you. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with disrespect is internalizing the behavior of others. You start to wonder, what did I do wrong? Why are they treating me like this? You overanalyze every word and every action, questioning yourself as if you're the problem. But here's the harsh reality. Often, the person disrespecting you is simply projecting their own insecurities, frustrations, or bitterness onto you. Their disrespect is a reflection of their issues, not yours. I've been there myself, stuck in the cycle of overthinking someone's hurtful words or actions, replaying it over and over in my mind, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. But over time, I realized something incredibly freeing. How people treat you is a reflection of who they are, not of your value or worth. Once you understand that, you'll notice a huge weight lifting off your shoulders. For example, imagine someone at work or in your personal life who consistently belittles you or undermines your contributions. It's easy to start doubting yourself, thinking that maybe you're not good enough or that you deserve the way they're treating you. But the truth is, their behavior is often a projection of their own insecurities. They might feel threatened by your competence or be dealing with personal issues that have nothing to do with you. Once you realize that their disrespect has more to do with them than with you, it becomes much easier to detach from the emotional impact. Taking things personally also gives the other person power over your emotions. When you internalize someone's disrespect, you allow them to control how you feel about yourself. They say something hurtful, and suddenly you're doubting your self-worth. But the moment you stop taking their behavior personally, you take back control. You can start to see their disrespect for what it truly is, a reflection of their own unresolved issues, not a commentary on your value. So, how do you stop taking it personally? It starts with shifting your perspective. When someone disrespects you, remind yourself that their actions are a reflection of them, not you. Think of it like this. If someone throws garbage on your doorstep, it doesn't mean your house is dirty. It just means they're carrying garbage. In the same way, when someone disrespects you, they're revealing something about themselves, not about you. Another thing to remember is that you can't control how others behave, but you can control how much you let their behavior affect you. If you start taking things personally, you're giving their disrespect far too much power over your emotions and self-esteem. Instead, try to approach the situation with a sense of detachment. Their actions may be hurtful, but they don't define you. And here's an important point. You have the power to decide how much their disrespect affects you. The moment you stop taking it personally, you regain control over your emotional well-being. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself to the person or to engage in their drama. Instead, you can approach the situation from a place of strength and self-confidence. 7. Walk away when necessary. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do when someone disrespects you is to simply walk away. This might sound like giving up or letting the other person win, but in reality, it's a bold and empowering move. Walking away is about protecting your peace, preserving your self-respect, and refusing to stay in an environment where you're not valued. Here's the truth. Disrespect, if left unchecked, has a way of slowly eroding your confidence and self-worth. Over time, being in a toxic environment where you're constantly belittled or dismissed can take a serious toll on your mental health. The longer you stay, the more you start to internalize the disrespect, questioning your value and your right to be treated with dignity. I used to think that walking away meant I was giving up, that I had to tough it out or fight back to prove that I was strong enough to withstand the disrespect. But I learned something critical. Staying in a toxic situation doesn't make you strong. It just makes you more vulnerable to harm. Real strength comes from knowing when enough is enough and having the courage to remove yourself from the situation. Walking away can take many forms. It could be as simple as physically leaving a conversation that has turned toxic, or it could mean something more significant like ending a relationship or leaving a job where you're not respected. The point is that you have the right to choose who you allow into your life and what kind of treatment you tolerate.